So I'll start the introduction in Italian and we'll switch back in English, ok? Quindi benvenuti e benvenute al nuovo episodio del podcast GameLoop dopo quanto? 1 anno e 3 mesi, 1 anno e qualche mese di pausa?
Forse di più, neanche mi
Forse di
ricordo.
più, non ce lo ricordiamo
Davvero
più.
pochissimo tempo. No, non c'ho, bisogna controllare su internet, ormai sul sito.
E ringraziamo il qui presente Pascal Luban che introdurremo fra poco per averci dato questa opportunità di riprendere il podcast. Speriamo di riuscire a riprenderlo con regolarità. Era comunque nei nostri piani di riprenderlo dopo un po' la pausa che abbiamo fatto post-Covid.
La cosa più importante
E recentemente...
era ricreare il setup, no? Che aveva fatto Bruno con,
Sì, esatto.
con Discord, OBS
Come
e tutto il
avete
resto.
notato non abbiamo Bruno qui con noi perché oggi non poteva venire, quindi abbiamo anche la novità che non c'è Bruno. Quindi speriamo di non fare casini registrando tutto. E volevo dirvi giusto 2 cose che vorremmo applicare al server Discord tra poco, che non abbiamo fatto adesso per il podcast per evitare problemi, ma vorremmo mettere il server Discord in lettura privata per poter dare a mano noi i permessi agli utenti in maniera da evitare gli spammer che spesso arrivano e ti segnano tutto come da leggere. E vorremmo poi aprire un forum sul canale Discord, sul server Discord, per raggruppare tutti quei progetti che ancora sono in fase di nascita, che hanno bisogno di un team, quindi persone che cercano team, e avere una separazione, quantomeno stiamo pensando alla modalità, ma quantomeno all'interno del forum progetti, una separazione tra i progetti che devono partire, così uno quando se li va a vedere, se sta cercando progetti da generare è più facile. Adesso è un po' tutto più condiviso. Quindi ora faremo questo podcast in inglese. Se non sapete l'inglese potete aspettare la traduzione automatica di YouTube, che sono sicuro che farà schifo.
O ve l'ho imparato.
So, yeah, learn English, please. So we're back in English, and yeah, we are here with Pascal Luban, that is a renowned game designer, and he's here today because he wanted to have a Q&A session with the community, and especially about his new project about teaching people game design. So let's start from the basics. First thing first, hi, Pascal.
Hello, ciao a tutti. My Italian is kind of limited. My wife speaks fluent Italian, but mine is just
okay.
too little, yes.
Okay, nice. So I want to ask you, how did you become a game designer? What did you study? What was your background?
Well, actually, I started about 30 years ago, and at that time there was no school, nothing. All the people that started in the game industry at that time were kind of self-learner, and I'm not even sure that the term game designer existed. When I started to work, I started freelance, and actually I call myself game author.
Okay.
The term game designer came later. So when I started, actually to make a long story short, it started because I played video games. I love role-playing games. And when the CD-ROM happened, I realized that now we're going to be able, to create nice, rich narrative games. And I started on a personal project with a friend of mine. The project did not go far enough. So my friend gave up, and I asked myself, what do I do? Do I continue? Or do I also give up? And I did the crazy decision, I continued. So I left my job, I was employee, I was doing marketing, and I started to work as a freelance. I got a first studio, and that's how, I learned my job. I learned the trade, So that's how I started, to make, again, a long story short.
So what was the job asking? I mean, it wasn't game designer. Did you just sign as a game creator?
I mean,
Like for companies, yeah.
I mean, when I decided to go freelance, I used the term game author. But once I got my first game design job, the studio gave me the title game designer. So that's how I got
okay.
it. So, but it was a very new title at that time. People were called game developers. It was very, very vague. Everybody was in that category.
Oh, okay. So you actually started as a freelance, and then did you just stayed freelance for your entire career?
Actually, I did, which is surprising because I did work on big projects for several years and with a high position, like a creative director or lead designer.
Okay.
But the thing is that given, the work laws in France, studios, liked to work with somebody who had the status of a freelance because those people are easier, to lay off. So basically, they like the freedom, that I was giving them. So that's why I did work on, my first big game was Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare. I worked on this title for like 2.5 years. And all the time I was freelance, and it was like that for almost 10 years. And it's only when mobile games started to pick up that I decided, to work on several projects at the same time in order, to kind of homogenize, my revenues. And then, obviously I work on lesser projects, but always as a freelance.
And did you work at many projects at the same time, sometime, or just one game?
Well, at the most, probably I was working on 3 projects at the same time, which is kind of
okay. Wow.
a lot, So usually I have one. I manage myself to have one major project and then 2 smaller ones. It could be consulting also. I did a lot of consulting, on existing games.
Okay. And did you ever go consulting on a game that was very ahead of development and was like having problems at the last minute?
Yes, it happened many times. I was like a fireman. They would call me when there's a fire on the game.
Okay.
Or also I got called pretty often on games which on published games, okay, but don't make any money. Which was a major issue a few years ago on many free-to-play games, because people didn't know how to design the games to make money, by selling items. So quite often I was called to help them, redesign the game to increase, the revenue. But yes, very often, I was called as a consultant, on a game that was kind of in dire strait. Yes.
Okay. And how much was it AAA versus AA indie when indie was a thing?
Okay, for about half of my career, I was working almost all the time on AAA. Alone in the Dark, 2 Splinter Cell games, Wanted, and Fighters and Cage is more of a AA. Then I worked a lot on mobile, and most lately I went back to console and Steam games. So most of those were kind of AA, maybe Vigor can be considered as a AAA, Vigor, the game by Bohemia Interactive. So it's probably more of a AA than a AAA. So.
And what were your favorite ones, and what was the most challenging one?
The favorite to work on?
Yeah, to work on.
Okay. Well, clearly it was Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. That was, I was working on the multiplayer. I was lead level designer. So that was, probably, the most exciting game to work on, because on the previous game, Pandora Tomorrow, we had kind of cleared off all the design issue. So on Chaos Theory, we just improved what was working well, corrected a few issues and so on. So there was a lot of work. It was intense work because we also decided to, PC players were always complaining that at that time, publishers didn't care about PC. So they would push games to console and eventually they would release, a month later, a PC version. And many people were kind of unhappy about that. So Ubisoft decided, to make a gift to PC players, and we added like a unique map editor.
Oh, wow.
To the PC version, yes. So, what I'm saying, that there was a lot of work on that game. It was very, very exciting time. So that was probably, the most exciting and engrossing experience I did, yes. And the
And
most
what was
challenging.
the most difficult? Yeah.
Yes, a lot of them. Maybe Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, was very, very challenging because the team was kind of brand new. The studio was called Darkworks. It was a new team, a lot of talents, but little experience in building AAA games. And technically, the game was very challenging. It was actually so challenging that we did not manage, to program combats well enough. The thing is that when I started on this game, I started as a kind of main game designer, and at that time, the idea was to compete against Resident Evil. Okay. Infogram, who's the publisher, was kind of a bit upset that Capcom, had kind of stolen the idea of Alone in the Dark and succeed with a game with Resident Evil. So Infogram wanted to make like a Resident Evil killer, and one of my first proposals for that game was, in order, to catch a larger audience, and also because the market was kind of changing, I wanted to focus on combat, which actually is exactly what Capcom did on Resident Evil 4, So there was in my design, there was less focus on puzzles, okay, and much more on combat. The problem is that the development team did not succeed in coding the combats properly. So the result is that we had to change the design mid-course and have more puzzles, because combats could not be as good as what I wanted, which means that sometimes pretty often, there could be a discrepancy between what the game designer wants, okay, his vision of the game, and what the team can do.
Yeah.
And that was a good example. So the development, was very difficult to a large extent because of that.
Yeah, that's a good thing to be able to pivot in that way. I mean, I bet a lot of teams fail because they cannot handle that, and they just try to accomplish what they cannot, and then they fail.
Yes, it is true that it's yes.
Yeah, go.
Yes, this is often one problem with especially indie team, is that individually, they've got the talent. People in the indie team usually have a lot of talents as programmers, game designers, artists. But putting it together, this is where the challenge comes. So what I'm trying to say is that what makes a game successful, it's like a good recipe, You can have the good ingredients, but if you don't have the right proportion and if you don't prepare them well, then you're going to fail. It's the same with indie teams, Usually a group of talented people gets together, and they do have the talent, but they try to they do a recipe which is kind of too sophisticated, for their experience level, and very often they fail. So that's why one of the advice I give, to indie team is that if your objective is to set up a studio, to live off your passion and your work, okay? That means that the very first games you guys should do should be very small, okay, and focus on creativity. And the first game, should be an opportunity just to learn to do a game together, okay? Face off the difficulty of tuning, design, gameplay, programming, and so on, okay? But do that on a very small game, so it's manageable. And once the first game has been published, which is already something fantastic, when you publish a game, even if it's a small one, you get feedback, you get downloads, you get likes, so you start to show, hey, my team can do something. Then you can go on another project, which is a bit more ambitious on. That's the way to do it. But starting on the first project with something which is too ambitious, I think it's a recipe for failure.
Yeah,
So probably the
I've
first
always
game should
heard
be
that. Yeah,
something, which is very, the design heavy, like, I don't know, a classic deck of cards game, or some games that you need like to tune iteratively to get it better, with those Excel lists and tables where you cannot really automate. You need to like
Absolutely, yes,
tune and test a lot with a lot of users. So of course, something like that is probably a game that will require your freelance experience. So for a game like that, people might like call you for help. But of course, if it's their first game, for sure they shouldn't start with something like that.
That's right. Yes. And again, I insist, they should focus on creativity. So the two objectives should be a game which is highly creative and a game which is small. The goal is not, to make money or, to catch the attention of a publisher or, no. It's just to make a game, but it has to be clean. The level of polish is very important in the industry, and polish takes a lot of time. So if you want, to have, if your product, which is going to be published, looks to be perfect polish, then it must be really very small, at least when you begin,
Yeah, I've always heard about your first game should be a small game, but no one ever said your game should be about creativity. And I think that hearing that now, it makes a lot of sense, because if it's your first game, you'll probably be doing some mess in all areas you can. But if your game is creative, at least it has a personality. It can stand out in the crowd.
Absolutely, yes.
And talking about polish, I had one of my questions about that, more about game length versus polish, because I think that myself, growing old, I find to be liking more and more shorter games, and I cannot play for long a game. For example, I've played 24 hours Metal Gear Solid 5 and Nier Automata, and after 24 hours somehow I get like distant from the game. I don't pick it up anymore. And games that last for 4 to 10 hours that I can play in a weekend or in a week in my nights, I think they are like a complete experience for me, so I can get to the end actually. And I find that for a small team, for an indie small team, it's more feasible to create a good product if it's small, and also you can like occupy less time of your players, so the players can play more games, so you can sell more games. But some teams, they try to like create big games with a lot of hours, with like procedural generation, roguelite mechanics, and dilute their content, giving it to you like one death after one death. So I was thinking about this, and what's your thought about this ratio between length and polish?
Well, it depends on so many factors. There's no easy answer. It depends on the experience of the team. It depends also on the game genre you've selected, and it depends of your overall ambition. What are your long-term ambition? So it's kind of difficult, to give an accurate answer to this kind of question, which is very, very broad. Again, what I'm trying to say is that what I want to insist is that to succeed, to set up a successful studio and to live off your passion, okay, I strongly recommend, going step by step. So in other words, the game you do, it's not an end in itself. It is just one step on a long staircase, okay? And to reach the top, you have to go through all those smaller games, less ambitious one, and so on, And every time you learn, every time you get some people get to know you, your community grows, and that's how you can eventually tackle much more complex product, and also attract the attention of the media as well as publishers. So that's kind of the general path to follow.
And speaking about indie games, I noticed that a lot of the hits, so the few ones that make a lot of money, but they're not representing the average, they are all small games that they cost less than $10, and they are almost always cooperative multiplayer games. Somebody calls them friends lop, because a lot of the time is just like asset flips and a plugin with multiplayer implemented in it, and then they just try to sell and hit. And they probably are good on short video platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram, and they probably grab the copies they sell with impulse buys. So do you think it is as advisable to go for that route and try to win the lottery for a new team, especially? I don't think so, but
The thing is that today the market is on mobile, then Steam, and on mobile it is essentially free to play. So it's very, very difficult to sell a game, at what we call premium business model. So you just sell the game, even if it's €5, very, very difficult on mobile. On Steam, it's a bit easier, okay, but there's a lot of competition. So, of course, when you start on the first project, you don't have to, either you make a game which is entirely free, you don't care about making money, okay, or you can eventually sell it again at premium price, which I don't recommend. Why? Because on your first game, you want people to play the game so you can get statistics. So you can show, people, look, we have this game and we have 2,000 people playing it every day. Look at our retention and so on, so you can start getting stats that we can use, to show publishers and whatever, So I would not try to get money on my first games by selling it premium. Eventually, I can have in-app purchases on cosmetics, whatever, or have some advertising, possibly, But I wouldn't go, for money which, allow me to even for a few euros, that just wouldn't work. And you have to get used to work on mobile, because this is where most of the market is. This is where most of the growth is. Steam also, it's also possible, but Steam is very difficult. And on Steam, you cannot go for small games. I mean, most games on Steam are mid-sized. And as I said earlier, you should start with smaller games. So the result is that if you start on smaller games, you are kind of forced to go to mobile. And on mobile, you should go free to play. You should go freemium.
So you're saying that?
So actually,
yeah, go, Angela, go.
Sorry, sorry. I was the question was like that we are talking about indie teams, right?
Yes.
So they want to do their first game, and you are suggesting them to go mobile.
Yes.
I mean, it's something that
Yes.
I haven't heard for a long time. I mean, so are we talking about setting a business on top of a mobile game, or just building this, as you said, like make the team do one game that has some players so that they can later make a bigger game that will sell, maybe switching from mobile to PC? Or are we just saying start by setting a company that will work on mobile with a...
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
That's what I say, start by that,
Okay, free game.
Many indie studios start games on Steam.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's an error. Why? Because Steam is flooded with titles, okay? And in general, on Steam, you need to have mid-sized games to succeed. So that means that forces you to make it big on Steam. And what do I say? Mobile is where
Mobile
there's
is flooded. It's flooded as well,
It-
right?
That's right. You are right. But remember, on mobile, you can make games much bigger, much smaller. So the goal should not be to make one big game on Steam. Your objective should be to make maybe 3 or 4 smaller games on mobile. And through every game, you learn the skills for making games. You learn about communication skills. You learn about marketing. You learn about you create a community. That's how you do it. And it's much easier to do it on mobile than on Steam.
Okay.
With a free game that has the option of having like in-app purchase or
That's right. Yes. You can
ads.
try to get some money this way. Yes. But your prime objective should be first learn how to make games, get some statistics, get known, get a community.
And what if the team aims to make a game that is suitable not for mobile but only for PC? I mean, nowadays, they play Minecraft and Fortnite on their phones, but I think it's more difficult to land a game that is like a first-person or third-person shooter on mobile.
Yes, you are right. Yes. Well, I mean, if there's a point where also, can I say, there is ideal strategy, okay, and there is what people want to do. And what I'm trying to say is that if really people want to go on Steam, if for some reason, they don't like the mobile environment, and they think that the game they have, is suited for Steam, then they should try, okay? But they should be aware that this is not the optimal strategy. They have to know it, okay? So they have a plan B.
Okay.
You see what I mean? I know that many developers don't like mobile for good and bad reasons, okay? So forcing them to do something they don't like, it's not a good way. They won't do a good job. But they have to learn, so they go to Steam, okay, they try something, then you'll realize it's not that easy, even if the game gets published, nobody will play it, nobody will see it and so on. So they'll realize, oh, we did it wrong. Okay, now they touched, I would say, the challenge of the market, by their own experience. So then, they will say, oh, mobile, maybe that's a good idea after all, so that's what I'm trying to say.
About no one would play it.
There is also a question from the chat.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for the mobile games. I think that mobile games is really something that people want to avoid, because the question is about if would game jams also count as a way to gain experience as an alternative to mobile games. So people really don't want to have anything to do with mobile games.
I know that, but game jams are different. On a game jam, you do something very small, and you cannot polish it. And most importantly, you don't touch the reality of the market. The reality of the market, and that this is valid for any kind of game on any platform, is that you must get noticed. I mean, the challenge, yes, this is something I should say now. I mean, the challenge for indie developers is for your games to be noticed. And this is much, much harder than you can imagine. Really, I will even go to the point that what I also do some teaching, and what I recommend to my students is that when they start working on a game concept, okay, which is very early on, they must ask themselves the following question. Will my game have one feature that will immediately attract the media attention? If it doesn't, maybe they should change the concept. In other words, their game concept must be built for excellent communication. So maybe this comes as a shock to many people who think marketing and communication is an afterthought. First you do the game, and then you worry about marketing and communication. This is a deadly error. Okay, you must integrate early on the issues of communication marketing. In other words, if your game from the very start doesn't have a strong USP, something that will catch immediately the attention of the media and the gamers, you start on the wrong foot.
Yeah, I was asking about that. I mean, mobile seems hard, so I'm not really familiar with trying to get noticed on mobile. But from what I understood, it's all based on advertising on other small games. So, what can be some like channels to poke to be noticed? That like are specialized like online magazines still a thing about that, or just you are suggesting just to advertise on Instagram and other games?
No. I'm not. I mean, advertising is very expensive and requires some skill. No,
Yeah.
if you're in indie studio, indie team, you want to do a mobile game. Okay. Now, the best way to get this game noticed, okay, is through the media. Now, actually, the specialized media, they are looking for the next gem. They are looking for the next Blizzard. They are looking for the next Fortnite. So when they get press release, trailers from very small studios, nobody has heard about them. Actually, they are interested. Okay, and if they find something that says that shows like an interesting project, something which is creative, they will talk about it. And this is why I said earlier that for your first project, an indie team try to be as creative as possible in order to catch the media's attention. Because if you succeed, then media will talk about your game. That's how you'll start getting the loop. You get attention. Then another thing also is that you have all the social medias. This is like we are on Discord now, so that means that if you have a game which is well polished, fun to play, and creative, then you've got plenty of free channels where you can advertise. And believe me, people will try your game. They will. So you will start building a community. And that means that, obviously, I'm not saying it will happen overnight. It takes months and months of effort, but eventually you'll have thousands of people playing the game. And then, you'll have word of mouth that will also start working. And it will allow you to show some statistics, but potentially to publishers. Because publishers know it's very difficult, when you have no marketing budget, it's very difficult to get noticed and to get sales. If you can show, look, we've got people playing the game, on average, they play for 10 hours, and probably, so you get those kind of statistics, then you will catch the publisher's attention. And publishers are the people who will help you market the game on a larger scale. So you see the process how it is. This is why I say it's a step-by-step method, This is why, the first games really should be focused on learning to do a game, getting a community, getting some attraction, getting known outside. And eventually, you'll catch the publisher's attention, and they will be the guy who have the money and the skills to push your studio, to a next level.
Okay. It remember me what you said about making a game to get noticed. There's a guy, it's a young guy that's called Gavin Eisenbates. I don't know if you're familiar with. He's the author of Choo Choo Charles, the game with the train that is like an horror version of the, how is it called, the Charlie Train. There was like a TV show for children that has a train with a face, and he made an horror game out of it because he noticed that this trend of making horror games about things that were for children when the players were children at the time was going well. So he as a child he watched this show, so he thought about making a game about that, but horror, all alone, and he made a ton of millions of dollars. And his next game is called Cuff Busts, and he's multiplayer, but he stopped developing for like 6 months. And he researched the market. He researched all the YouTubers, Twitchers. So he said he checked all the viewers minute by minute, depending on what was on screen. So he tried to design a game that was optimized for streamers, so that a guy playing this game would get a lot of views. So the game would market itself just by being played on YouTube. And he said that, yeah, I want to make a game to make money, and this has to be my last game. So I don't want to make games anymore, because I wanted to make games for fun, but now they're a chore. So if people are interested, he has a channel in which he speaks about this game development stuff, and also he has a public one to players. And so, yeah, there are a few people that are trying that, and they actually are successful at that. So I think it's a good advice to not just make a game just because you think it's fun, but you also have to sell it if you want to eat something at the end of the day. So what about this part about getting noticed, but the relationship with streamers nowadays is like 10 years ago maybe was different, but now it all depends on streamers. So this thing about making a game targeting streamers, when does affect how the game is fun? What do you think?
I mean, first of all, streamers, it's one way of promoting a game. As I said, you also have the traditional medias, and you have also all the communities on Reddit, on Discord, even also on Facebook, So there are several ways, of doing it. Now, the challenge again, it's to create something that will catch people's attention, and this thing must be visual. Like a few years ago, but 10, 15 years ago, I met an executive from Electronic Arts. And he told me, at that time, they were kind of doing pretty well. And he told me that when we look at concept, we want one feature which is unique and can be visual. It can be like art style, it can be an angle of camera, it can be a gameplay, it can be like a graphic theme, whatever, It has to be something that people have not seen before and can be shown in a single image. Okay. And then for the rest of the features, we want features to be kind of safe, no risk. In other words, they want the concept to offer features, that work. Okay. So, and I think that when you think about it, I think it's very smart in the sense that they understood that if you want to convince people to be interested in your game, people don't read text, they don't. Sometimes they don't even watch trailers, They are seduced, usually within a few seconds. And an image is the best way to do it. So making sure that the game concept has something which is graphic and unique, that's one way, to catch everybody's attention. The streamers, the media, the gamers themselves. So that's probably, like a better strategy than just focusing on the streamers only. Because the streamers, they are kind of, everybody wants them to play your game. So at one point, there's competition. Too many games for too few streamers, and then you need to pay money so your game gets streamed. So it's like any other communication channels. It has its pros and cons, and after a while, it kind of gets worn out. More difficult to use.
Yeah, there's the Chris Zukowski from HTMAG, How to Market Your Game. He studies Steam mostly, and he paid a few people to just browse Steam for games, and he recorded them, and he noted how they browsed the game, how they browsed the trailer and the screenshots, and he saw that if there is no gameplay that is hooking them in the first seconds, they will just skip the trailer. and go to the screenshots, and if the screenshots are all the same, they will go to the next game. So yeah, even on Steam, that is so difficult. You have to, but also Steam helps you somehow, but you have to catch the eye of the players in a few seconds. One could think it's only for Instagram, for example. I mean, Steam is supposedly more slow to watch, but yeah, it's also on that. And also, Chris Bukowski says that he noticed that horror games are the ones that they are going well, and also cozy games and a few mix-up genres, for example, like Town Builder but cozy, or even horror but cozy. They're games that in Steam Next Fest are going well. And roguelites and roguelite, they're just everywhere. Everyone is making a roguelite now. So one strategy there could be to just go for the genre that is going well in the demos and in sales. What do you think about that? Is that advisable?
Yes, that's a good question. There's no simple answer. On one hand, studying the market is a very good practice. Okay, so getting ideas on the volume that some genres are doing, what the competition is, and so on, it's a good idea. But the thing is that if you do that on a genre which has been around for years and years, then there's just so much competition that even if you do, your due diligence, even if you study the competition and blah, 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 and the market positioning, it's going to be very difficult to succeed. So the thing is that, to me, ideally, if you decide to go this way, if you decide, to kind of study, the market, then you should try to spot trends. You should spot what is going to be the next big thing in terms of game style. For instance, have you seen this one which is emerging now? Have you seen those games where mobile games, sorry guys, but games where you need to unscrew, boards and things like that? All right, okay. So that didn't exist like 2 years ago,
Actually, I see those especially in the advertisement, in between, Duolingo matches, lessons, you have a lot of those kind of games when you...
So this is growing hot, In 2 or 3 years, it will be way too late. There'll be hundreds of those games like that. But if you are savvy enough, if you spend a lot of time to go through, the charts on the data on games, then you can spot trends like that, okay, and say, those kind of games, or this game just came up and is doing very well. Let's analyze it, and if indeed you think yes, it has the potential, to grow, then you can decide to do a game like that. But again, this is very difficult to do because other people do the same, and watch the market. So this is the first strategy. Okay, you analyze data, but you look for emerging trends. Difficult to do. The other strategy is to do something, it's to rely on instinct, okay? As a gamer, okay, you feel gameplay that works or not, okay? And you realize that when you actually build your own game or you do a prototype, you clearly, because you're all gamers, so you realize, that seems to be fun, I like it, So you work on it, you improve it, and eventually you release it, okay? And then you see if it works or not. So the second strategy looks to be riskier in the sense that there's no guarantee that it's going to work, but because you put your passion in it and you take the risk of putting it in the market, you get feedback from the market if it works or not. Rovio, known for Angry Birds, I think they have done like 15 games before they hit success, and nobody has heard about the games they did before, not because they were bad, probably, maybe some were, but just because they were not interesting, or they were copies and so on, So the second strategy I could recommend, it looks a bit risky, but rely on your passion, okay? You see, I think this is going to be fun, okay? Because I like it as a gamer, and if I like it, I'm sure there are millions of people out there who also will like it. So you work on it. Obviously, you need to respect, the good rules of game design, level design, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, okay. You test it yourself. Maybe you do playtest, so you get people outside the studio to play the game, And if you feel, we've got something interesting here, I can feel that our concept generates interest, passion, and fun, and you can spot that very quickly. Okay, then you build the game and push it to the market, and you see if it works or not. So of course, it might not work, but if it did, then maybe you are ahead of everybody else because you will have a unique product. It's not a copy of somebody else. You'll have a unique product, and then you can start one of those trends I was telling you about. I'm not saying it's easy, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that the strategy of just analyzing the market, it could work only if you start very, very early, and otherwise it won't get you anywhere.
Yeah. Most people, they just jump on the wagon when it's too late.
That's right. Absolutely, yes.
Actually, you
Now,
can
what is
probably
also possible?
you can probably mix the two things, right? I mean, you can go for something that you would like, so you can put the passion. The passion will help you to cope with a lot of polishing and like the suffering of polishing the game for a lot of time probably, and then you can kind of direct your idea, which is maybe directed to a niche, which is bigger, smaller. We don't know how big it is, how many players, as you said. Maybe there are millions of players that have the same tastes as me, maybe not. But then you can kind of tune and go and follow some trends inside the game of your choice, the style of game or the genre of game of your choice that you have picked out of passion, right? So
that's right, yes. And the third case is that you get commissioned by a publisher to do a game in a certain genre. And it happens quite often. So if a publisher say, hey, you team, I want to do me a Candy Crush game, okay, but bring it your unique style. All right, so you're not going to split on that, okay? You're going to accept the job, and yes, you'll try to do a job as good as possible. You'll try to bring your own twist, okay? So it's not a pure copycat of Candy Crush. So you try to be creative, but of course, if you got a client that wants you to do something, you do it because you want to do games. You want to get some money to support your team and do some investment and so on. So that's another case.
Okay, so yeah. Sometimes publishers, they need to fill up holes in their lineup, and
that's right.
They might.
And in that case, marketing is their problem. Marketing, it's the problem with the publisher. If it puts money in the game, if he finances your team, okay, then you will put money for the marketing.
Yeah, the guy I was talking about before, Gavin Eisenbergs, during these 6 months, he tried to find the next trend that wasn't yet a trend. So he didn't speak about that in his videos up until his game was announced. So he said, now guys, I can tell you about this because I'm already releasing the game and it is too late for you. I'm releasing this game. It will be the first one of this trend and you're too late. So you can jump on my wagon, but it's mine now.
Yes.
So yeah, the hope is that, or to just, for example, when Balatro came out, just the day after that, a few games popped up on Steam with coming date that were applying the Balatro twist on other games, and for example, the roulette. That can be done if the game is small, maybe, but it's also risky because you're just maybe. You're perceived as just a greedy man trying to copycat another game. Would you advise against that, or?
Well, some teams, are desperate for getting any money, because when you have a team, you just need to pay your people. So if you think there's an opportunity, if you think you can just, make some quick money, by copying an existing game, well, I mean, I'm not going to blame those people, because I know what it is when you need to pay, your employees at the end of the month, pay the bills and so on. So, so short-term strategy, that's for sure. Okay, it won't get you very far, but sometimes, to survive, you need to do those kind of things.
So maybe if the game is small, you can try to develop it for a few months at least.
Right,
don't overcommit to a clone.
Yes, and you can always bring your own twist. You can make the game easier, more difficult, more beautiful, have new modes. I mean, once you understand what makes a genre effective, okay, then you can always, change a few things. So it's not a pure copy, you see. It's a copy plus where you added your own stuff. So it's always possible to do that,
Yeah, like in all other art forms, you are always told to steal. In this case, it's like that.
Yes.
And about prototyping, I see that there are a lot of. I follow the YouTube scene of video game development just to check on that, and there are a ton of games that are like devlogs about games that people are developing that they just die at the prototyping stage, and a lot of people are like trying to give suggestions about how to prototype. And what I've seen is that the majority suggest you prototype wide, adding like every mechanic you can think of, every dynamic, and then just play them all together in the chaos that arises, and find the good things that mesh together, eliminate everything else, and then iterate on this. And like finding the fun is the term that comes up a lot. So how would you approach prototyping for like a small team? I guess that a big team has different means of prototyping than a small team can have.
That's right. There are essentially two cases. The first case, it's a small indie team, okay? Assuming, especially if there's no need to make money, because, maybe the team can be made up of people, who have jobs beside that or are students. So in that case, yes, I encourage them, at the prototyping stage to go wild. I mean, any idea, try them. Okay, now it's much faster than it used to be to prototype. Unity is a good way, but even on Unreal Engine, you can prototype pretty quickly. So the thing that, yes, you should test out ideas and see if it works. It's a bit like with Lego bricks. You want to do something. Okay, you have in mind what you want to do, like a vehicle or a building, whatever. So you take your bricks, you put them, and you say it doesn't work. You remove one, you put another brick. You see, so it's basically by an iterative work. Okay. Prototyping can be used that way. Okay, so that's fine if there's no deadline. Okay, ahead. On the other hand, if you are like an existing team, and you get commissioned, by your boss or maybe by a publisher, like, okay, in 2 months, we must release a prototype, and the prototype there's this, and this. Then there's not much playing around. Okay, you have to take the risk of copying existing features, maybe bringing your own twist to see if it works, okay? But you just cannot go for chaos, because then you'll never get anything out of it.
Okay, so when you're budget tight, you just have to go on more safely, walk the routes for games that are already tried the mechanics and okay, so you can do what you said before. You can bring your own twist to a well-defined genre, then risk less. So for a small indie team that is just trying to make his first game, focused on creativity, as you said, they should go wild.
That's right, yes.
Okay. And after the first stage of prototyping, then there should be playtesting. And I see a lot of teams, sadly, also Italian teams that comes, maybe they come to our server or they don't, but we watched them. And they publish the game and it feels they didn't make a lot of playtesting, and probably they will gonna fail. But this also happens to big players. For example, what happened with Concord, I've seen a few documentaries, and it was really strange. It seemed that they didn't playtest a multi-million-dollar franchise before releasing it. So I'm not sure when I think about game development, when should be the good time to start playtesting with external people, and how often? Because I feel that I would want to playtest externally a lot, but maybe a lot is too much.
Okay, so playtesting, it's a fascinating topic. I was playtest manager myself, so I can say that, and I would like you guys to keep what I'm going to say in mind. Okay, playtesting is what gives you the best ratio between what it costs in terms of time and money and how much it's going to improve your game. So what I'm trying to say is that for little time and little money, you can get amazing results in terms of improvement of the game. So today, most people agree with that. I mean, people say, yeah, playtest is great. But in my experience, very often it is not done or not done well. Why? Okay. Now, the first reason is that good playtest, as you say, should be done, with people from outside, okay, not team members. And if you do playtest with people outside, you should not have them playtest a prototype. It should be something that looks like almost the final product. Because people who are not game developers themselves, for them it's very hard to assess what they play if it doesn't look like and feel like the final product.
Okay.
So that means that, you cannot do playtest early on. You must do playtest later on. And later on, usually, if the production is not well managed, you are late. You are very late, okay? It happens to all studios, including senior ones. And what happens too often is that studios are short on time. So they know playtest is important, okay? But when they should do them, they are in a rush. So they allocate little time for correct playtest. A second reason for the lack of playtest is also people don't always know how to do them. I'm not saying it's complicated, but there's still some, there are some protocols to follow, some methods, to do. And sometimes people just don't know how to do that properly. So that's another reason. And the third reason, which I've seen in the past, but I don't see it very often now, is that also design teams can be afraid of playtest. Because when you ask the opinion from people outside, they could say kind of negative things about your game. And some designers are afraid of that, you see? So that's why also, and again, today it's kind of rare, but it does, I saw that a lot a long time ago, Some design teams were just reluctant to do playtests because they were afraid of negative feedback. So for those three reasons, lack of time, lack of know-how, and also fear of result, not all studios do a proper playtest. Now, okay, let me, it's a fascinating topic, and so useful. So you can kind of do playtest at 3 levels, okay? First, you can do playtest with a prototype. Now, you can do that, but usually this is internal. Okay, so you play your own game, or people in the team play it, play the prototype, and you get some feedback. That's pretty interesting, okay? But you are not necessarily representative of your audience. And people know the game, so they are biased, okay? But there's no choice. Then, when you have something which is kind of a half-polished prototype, then you can maybe try, to ask people on Discord, or maybe on Facebook or whatever, to ask people to play test the game. Now, the problem with that is that you cannot select whoever will test the game, and you don't know how they'll do that. You don't know if they know how to play. You don't know how much time they spend. You don't know if they play this kind of game and so on. So you get some results for free, but the results are kind of not necessarily of good quality. Okay, the best way to do playtest is to organize them where you select the people, they're outside of the studio, so you make sure that they match your target audience. Okay, and you have like a real protocol for each playtest session, and you do that on parts of the game which are almost finalized. That's how you can do playtests at those 3 stages, but you don't necessarily get the same kind of result. But in any case, I mean, yeah, playtest, and I insist on that. This is the guarantee, of having a good gameplay. Playtest is a must.
About selecting the players that test the game to be matching your audience, I remember about watching a few GDC videos about that. It was kind of like psychology related thing. I mean, they were trying to model what the target player is, and then trying to find matches and people. So like submitting psychological tests to players before getting there. How would you advise that?
No. I mean, I've run maybe half a dozen playtest campaigns, so it's a lot easier. You just define your audience. So people who play this kind of game, who play on that kind of machine, and play so many hours a day, and blah blah blah. So you define that. You publish ads. You get people. You make a selection. Then those that are selected, you ask them to either to come to your studio and test on site, or sometimes you can do remote testing. But in any case, you see the people playing. And then you can very quickly, just by watching them play, you can know whether those guys are representative of your audience, and you keep the best.
Okay.
So it's kind of an old-fashioned way, okay? It takes some time, but there's no magic, no profiling, basically. You see the people playing and you say, okay, this guy, he's representative of my audience. I'll tell you something. Okay, a little trivia. Okay. When I was on Splinter Cell on Pandora Tomorrow, I was also playtest manager. Okay, and we had a lot of tuning issue because it was multiplayer. We had tuning issue on equipment. Okay, and there was a point where toward the end, right before we released the game, tuning was just a few percentage, okay? And there was at least one situation where I relied on the opinion of one single playtester, because I knew that this guy was exactly the profile of my target audience, and this guy knew the game very well. So if he was telling me like this item, like a grenade, has a slightly too big radius, I would listen to him because I trusted the playtester. I knew he was that good, you see? So of course you don't do that early on. You only do that, when you are for very, very minor adjustment, But that's the value of playtest. And it works only because you have selected the playtesters, you see? It takes time. The only way to select them is just to see them playing.
So what about paying them? Would that affect the tests? Or
never do that? Never do that, because you get people only for the money. They will lie. They will tell you, yes, we love your game, blah blah blah. Never do that. Okay. However, a playtest session should be using volunteer, but should be brief. Maximum 3 or 4 hour session, because people have lives. They have family, and sometimes, So playtest session with people outside your studio should be brief, a few hours only, and they should be free. You don't pay them, okay? However, it's always nice to reward them with a little gift, like a voucher, like a gift certificate to buy something. Yes, okay, but you give it after the session. You don't attract them with that. What you want to have is that you want to attract people who are passionate about games. You see, that those will make the best playtesters.
And I imagine that for a small indie team, maybe they are remotely located. So would you do that online requiring webcam?
I mean, for a PC game or console game, you can test remotely. because you just ask the playtester to share his or her screen. So you can watch this person play, you can talk to this person, so not a problem, okay? For mobile games, it's impossible, So in that case, for mobile games, you should, get people, to come to your studio, or maybe, you should go to a shopping mall, and have people, possibly, But
So
for Steam and
now
console,
it's possible with Discord to stream the game on your phone. So maybe would that suffice?
as long as you can talk to the playtester, because when you see somebody playing your game, hundreds of questions, you'll have many questions. Why do you do that? And at that point, what happened? What do you think? You see, plenty of questions will come to your mind. So you need to be able to ask the questions, and you need sometimes to ask the question, live when the playtester is actually, doing the session. So on mobile, it's more complex.
Okay. So you don't see a requirement to see their faces?
No.
Okay.
No.
And I've seen that a lot of people, small teams, solo devs, they only use conventions to playtest. Do you think that's a good idea?
Probably not, because people don't have the time. They will just play a few minutes. Again, you don't know if they are representative of your audience. It's interesting to get maybe some feedback, brief feedback, but no, it's not very serious now.
Okay, so it's better to organize
Yes.
a proper playtest session, inviting players, and then maybe you offer them pizza and
why not? Yes.
And then you select the good ones. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
See, yeah, I think that's a big problem also in our Italian game development community, because I don't think that's happening at all. So I hope that hearing this will help our Italian industry grow a bit. Make a lot of playtests, proper ones.
Something that I could share with you is just like some kind of not a recipe, but my recommendation on how to set up a playtest structure, because you're not the only one who tell me about that. I'm doing on Discord, with other developers, group, and they always have the problem, how to run playtest. And actually, there's not much published on the topic. So maybe I should do something about that, or maybe have some kind of video course on that, possibly, But there's a demand, So be reassured that you're not the only ones, to wonder how to run playtest properly.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that there are some nuances about making games, commercial products, that are not taught in like books or schools, and probably people used to like learn them at work as junior, but nowadays a lot of teams are born straight out of schools, and so without experience, junior people, they go and make a game. So I think that's really valuable to learn from senior devs in your area, also in others. For example, if you are a programmer, you can always learn from all the other areas. So I for myself, I went to work on a small company, so I could be watching all the departments at work and have some senior people on top of me that I could learn from. And my passion would be to have my company, have my workers, and do my games. But I felt that I wanted to learn something from people that know, like the prehistoric word of mouth diffusion of technology, of knowledge. And about books and game design schools, are there any books that you feel you can recommend, or that are like a must to be read but not suffice to the game design career?
Well, there are a few. The problem with design books is that, in my view, none is designed for beginners. I mean, one which I think is good.
The Book of Lenses.
Yes, I mean, okay,
classic.
this is interesting. The problem is that to me, I've read it, inside and out. There are plenty of interesting things, but to me, this is written for people who already have some basics in game design.
Okay.
See, if you try to design a game from scratch, with that, you won't succeed. The other problem also is that books like that, are a bit old. So our industry moves fairly fast, you see. And many books which have been published out there, are just kind of old, so there are so many good things to learn, but for beginners, it's no good. And I don't know any books, for beginners. There was one I can show. It's yes, but this one, but it's in French. Sorry, it's kind of all reversed.
Okay.
So this one was written for beginners, and I know the guy, I know the author, but even that. I read the whole thing and I say, well, it's not enough. So something it's on.
And about schools, in Italy we have a ton of schools. It's like it's like a sprawl of schools. We have, for example, Event Horizon, Digital Bros, AEV, just to name a few. They're like in the last 10 years they popped up everywhere. And are there any in like France, and what's your thought about game focused schools?
Okay, in France we used to have a lot of schools teaching video game development. Okay, a lot, and I did teach in some of those. A good number of them just disappeared because they were just not good enough. We have few schools which I would recommend. It's Rubica, which is in northern France, which is very good on game design and game production. Then we have Engine, which is like a public school, which is in the southwest of France. Very good, and they train for everything: programming, art, design, so on. The third one is Art Digital in Paris, which is more focused on art and design, but it's a private school, very expensive. And there's the fourth one, which is kind of growing. It's called CréaSup. It's in Burgundy. Burgundy, the region.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fairly small school. I do teach there a little bit, and what they do is pretty amazing. Like recently, their master students have developed games, and at least one of them will probably be published. So it's really, really good quality. So it's a new school. Okay, they focus on programming and art, a little bit design. So I would say I would put those four schools, in my best selections, but.
And
what do you think of those schools that because I've seen a lot actually. I live in Spain. I'm Italian, live in Spain, and I've seen a bit of the overview, the background that we have here. We have plenty of courses, and they usually mix a lot of some of the one that you have said, like programming and design and art. So I mean, from one point of view, I agree that you need to give the students an overview, but from the other part, being myself like a programmer, hardcore programmer, I know nothing about design. I feel that if you mix the thing all together during like 2-3 years, you are neither specializing the student into programming or art or designer. You're just putting everything together. Do you have the same? Do you feel the same from your point of view? Like if you mix all together, maybe you are creating like a as I said in English, like a master of all trades. Like it's weak from every side, right?
All the schools I just described first kind of teach students everything. But after a few years, they drive students to specialize. You see, so it's impossible to be good in every field. So that's the strategy they do. Now, I think that it's good for anybody. If you are a designer, you have to know about art. Okay, if you are a programmer, you need to know about design and art, so it's very useful, to know about the other trades. Okay, but you still need to specialize in something.
Yeah, I mean, especially maybe a designer needs to understand a bit of programming to like put together a prototype or like suggest changes or show something to the team and say, look, I have this thing. It's not all an idea. So he needs or she needs to know a bit more about programming and of course art and of course communicate with the rest of the team. Maybe, I don't know if more a designer than the other roles. Maybe the designer is more in the center of like the rest of the.
It also depends on the size of the team. I think if you are in a big team, you can have shields from you and the other departments. But if you're in a small team, you're all together. You have to speak to the artist and to the designer, and so yeah, having a bit of an overview can help. But 3 years is maybe too much. And about the students, how do you think is the best moment and background to decide to go to a game design school or game development school? You're just out of college and you don't want to do university, or it's better if you do the bachelor degree in university, or maybe you just worked as an electrician for 10 years and now you want to make games?
Difficult question. I'm not sure I can answer properly. Ideally, I would suggest somebody who wants to go into the game industry first, maybe get some kind of general, education, like maybe in even literature or economics or art, programming, whatever, okay. And then go to a game development school. Now, why? First of all, you need to learn how to, though development schools are requiring a lot from students. It's a lot of work, a lot of things to learn and so on. So it's kind of good, to learn how to work on heavy loads. It's good to learn in university, whatever, just just you need to learn. Okay. You need also to learn to be autonomous in your work. You need to be able, to improve your communication skills. Communication is super important in the game industry, not only in writing, but in audio, in speaking. So you see, first you need to and then you need also to expand your culture. That's why, it's quite interesting to have people who come from like a literature, history background, their mind is rich, they know many things, they have a broad culture. And then once you've done that, you can go into a development school, The thing that's long, because that means that, your school, you spend like 6-7 years in school, so it's a bit long. To me, that would be the ideal way to do that. Many people just go to a game development school right after high school,
Yeah, a lot of people, they just go straight out of high school and maybe they used to play video games and they want to
actually
make a career out of that.
In many schools where in most of the schools where I do teach, the first year, it's basically like a screening year, So that means that they know that 1/3 of the people, will just give up. Either they will leave up by themselves, or at the end of the year, they'll be told, well, sorry, that's not for you. Goodbye, So the first year is a screening year,
Yeah, I used to work in the I don't know the English word, but in the university, the students out of high school, they have to decide in which university to go, and I was helping them. And
Okay.
I received a lot of people or parents that were saying, "Oh, my son is all day at the computer, so I thought he could do computer science." And I was maybe not. Maybe bring it here, like bring him here and let me speak to him, like ask him. So yeah, I think there are a lot of people that they just don't know what to do, and they just stumble in courses that cost a lot of money. And sometimes it's better to just like go dig some dirt and be useful. It sounds sad, but it's I mean, it's nice to have a work that fulfills you and not just be at home playing video games.
I mean that's also the purpose of this screening first year, because I think people that are really like newbies completely in the field of game developing, they, as you said, have this idea of like, I like playing games, so it means automatically that I will like developing them. But it's not like that. I mean, developing it's a completely different thing. So of course you need to try it for a bit and then see if you like it or if you don't like it, as everything in life.
And about communication, you said that communication is important, yeah. And what do you think about full remote work?
Well, on one hand, we've been doing it for a long time. Even before COVID, we used to work remotely. A lot of people used to work remotely, so we know that. And during COVID, it was even stronger. Now, it's possible. Okay, it works, but you have to know that it will work better if you've got senior people, so people who are autonomous and who knows how to kind of exchange with others. And then also, you have to be aware that it's going to take more time because communication will be degraded. So my recommendation is that, if possible, the core team should be in one location, and then you can have plenty of people outside, okay, like remote people, but not necessarily lead people, okay? But if you have no choice, which happened to me very often, in that case, you have to be very, very strict on the team organization. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos. And you also have to be aware that it's going to take more time. In other words, we can get the same work done, but it will take more time because of communication, mishaps. So that's what I can say about, remote work. So.
And from a standpoint of the junior person that has to learn from senior guys, is it affecting it, do you think, being full remote?
No, because you learn the same way by exchanging with people. When you want to do something, then if you've got your senior, will kind of guide you in the same way. It's just that it's going to be, it will take more time. Okay, it will take more time, and if communication, which requires a lot of effort, is not well done, then some of the message will be lost.
Okay.
I have another question, which is a bit like, we haven't asked you that before, but it's a question that I think maybe you got it already. I mean, every one of us has got it already about our job. What about our job in the future? Now that there is the AI, right? AI tool. What do you think about AI tools in regard of your profession of game designing? What do you think? Do you think they can help? Like we were talking before about seniors and juniors, if they can affect how they learn this thing, or if it can help seniors, because of course, coming from a programming background, I have already listened to a lot of people talking about AI. AI is either destroying us or helping us becoming superior human beings. What do you think about AI?
Okay, this is something also I'm getting interested in, so I'm happy to ask this question. Now, I'm sure you know that AI will give great results if you give great input to the AI. In other words, if you ask the right question to the AI, it's going to give you an interesting result. Let me give you an example. If you ask the AI, design me a concept for a first-person shooter. Very vague, okay. Well, basically what you will get is something which is kind of, but everybody does, no value at all, okay. But if you say, design me or propose me a game concept for a first-person shooter that takes place in the Middle Ages, then, you're adding a little thing, a little twist that will enhance the work of the AI. And this little twist, the only way to do it is because you know what game design is all about, you know the market, you know the industry, and the AI will never know that. So my vision is that, yes, AI will improve our work, but first we need, to have the background to use it. But eventually, yes, it's going to save us time because some things, are kind of repeated over and over. And for those things, yes, the AI will help me, save time. So that's my vision on the use of AI.
So you have a positive take on it, and we just need to learn how to use it because it's something so new and it's starting to be used so widely.
That's
So, for
right.
example, I've used it for with some inputs, as you said, either to review my work as a coder, but sometimes I have some ideas about games, and I just ask, "What about that thing?" And I was thinking about, I have this feeling also. Can you translate this feeling to something in a game, or I would like a game which is like that, but I remember this when actually that was a real conversation that I had with the AI. I had some feelings from when I was a child, and I was trying to create a game out of this feeling and had this twist, which was like a different thing in a game. It was like, let's say, turn-based, and then more idea came on, and then I started inputting more ideas. Like I remember this game, I remember this part from this game, and actually the AI helped me shape something, put together things, or at least even have like a recap. So let's give me a recap of what we have told and all the games that I've cited, or all the parts of the games that can be used to create this new thing. So I think, yeah, it can be useful, but as you said, you need to give it the proper input, the proper diversification, because of course, if you are too vague, the reply is going to be vague as well, and not useful.
And I have a question about a thing that is, at least on YouTube, is like controversial, and it's a game design documents. I've seen people say that you shouldn't have a game design document. And from my experience, what I've seen is that if you are working in a team, you need to have like an oracle that is not a person that knows things. So a document should be that. So if, for example, you have 5 people in a team, 5 people will need to ask questions. And if they ask all the questions to the lead game designer will only respond to them and not work. So how should a game design document be structured and maintained in a small team versus a AAA team?
Okay, some people said that we don't need design documents because even if we write one, things will change very quickly, which is true. Nevertheless, you still need to have design documents because otherwise, how can you budget the game? How do you know how many people you need and what technology you need and so on? So it's kind of, for many reasons, you need to have one. Now, the question is that how detailed should it be? Now, what I've seen in many teams is that when you work on the game design document, you don't write the whole thing in one go, okay? You do it piece by piece. So in other words, like for instance, now this month, let's work on the movements for the main character, okay? So in that case, the design team will just do the detailed design document just for movement, okay? Then it's being implemented. The art team comes in, and after a few weeks, we can test something out. We test it, we get feedback, we improve it, and so on, you see? But there's still a need for a design document to get started. I mean, how can you give instructions to the guy, to the 3D artist, to the special effects guy, to the programmer. I mean, you must have some kind of design document, even if it's a little piece of the whole entire game, but you still need them.
Yeah.
Like the reference, the truth, right? And would you keep then updated as the game progress, or it's something that maybe in later stage is not as used, or maybe it's something that you just don't have time and then you just go with a cow?
No, as I say, in this new way of developing games, you do small pieces of game design on one issue, and then it's being developed. Then you play test it, you get feedback, and then you automatically, you modify, the feature. So you don't necessarily. So you could either update the design document for that feature, or not. It's up to you. But in any case, you still need to have one to get started. I don't know if I'm very clear. It's
Yeah, I
was
mean,
thinking more about like with big teams, if there is like a ground truth reference for design, and then I mean that's why I mean, should you keep something updated to say always that's the law, and then if something goes out, like it's not as the document, you can always say that's the updated document, that's your reference, so don't change anything if it's not like written here.
I think there's a misunderstanding of what a design document is. Now, what you are talking about, it's what we call the game pillars of the game intention. So this is like it's a much shorter document, okay? And that should be like the truth, that's what we want to do, okay? But then the design document itself, it's a highly detailed document. I mean, it can have hundreds of pages together, So this is two different things. The first one should not move, or if we change it, if we have a really, really big reason, okay? But there's no detail. The other one, the design document, they change all the time because it is adapted, to what we actually play.
Would it be useful to go online and find game design documents that have been published about AAA games? For example, I remember there was one about Tomb Raider. I imagine those game documents are in the status at the end of the game.
The thing is that what you will find are probably old games and documents, and they're probably written the way we used to write them like 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Things are changing. So I'm not sure you could find today a reference, of a kind of recent games and document. And also there are a lot of bad ones, like if you see a games and document filled up with text, is no good, A good design document, the one you will hand out to programmers, like you or artists, has little text. It's full of graph and tables, so it's easier, to develop, and I would even go to the point when I write a game mechanism, okay, when I describe the game mechanism, I put myself into the head of a programmer, So you are a programmer, so
Yeah.
Programming is about like if conditions and loops and so on, and events. So when I describe my mechanism, that's how I write it, with if conditions and and events on and conditions for closure and so on, So I try to put myself into the head of the programmers. So that's very, very detailed, and I'm not sure you will find much of that in GDD outside.
Yeah.
What is freely available.
Yeah. So about the purpose of a game design document, for my experience, it, as I said, is to be like the knowledge base that everyone can refer to. And for example, inter-department for programmers, they look there and say, okay, the designers want us to implement this thing, so we don't need to ask the game designers, and the artists the same thing. And from the designer's point of view, I imagine it is that you decide something and you go on to the next thing, and you don't have to remember everything you decided. You just have the truth there. You can go there and read. And if you want to make a change, you can go there and make a change and then say to the other departments, okay, we changed this and it's already budgeted. You can work on that. Would you agree or not?
No, that's not the way I work. No, I mean, the GDD should be very accurate. Okay, it should reflect the vision of the game designers. Then it should be developed. If somebody in the team say, well, we could do it better, yes, of course, we change it. Okay, but if there's no good reason to inform the game designer, then it should be developed as written by the game designers.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it is something that scares people because they just think about, okay, what should I write in this empty Google document I have in front of me?
Again, this is something I should publish something, maybe it's going to be my next course. The thing is that people tend to mix up the concept document, the pitch deck, the preliminary game design document, the game design document. People mixed up everything, and each document has an objective, and it is true that I don't know any book that talks about that, so this is probably something to do, yes, to explain.
Yeah, a course about that would be awesome. I think it would be unique, at least.
What is something that is taught in those schools that we have talked before in the game design courses?
I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I mean, if all those documents, the purpose of all those documents and how to write one, is it a central piece in one of the game development courses that we were mentioning before? That would be something that you would learn in those courses?
But in schools, in theory, yes. I mean, the must, the better. Yeah.
I have a question about game design and analysis frameworks.
Yes.
What's your thought about that? And for example, the most probably ancient one and famous one is MDA, Mechanics, Dynamics, Aesthetics, and there are really a lot of them. It seems like every game designer after a while wants to invent one, and also on how to use them. For example, MDA is also always thought about, you start the game developing from one of the three letters, and there are school of thought about that, and maybe it changes on the project and on the game designer emotions about a game. What do you think about those?
Well, I mean, I know that some people have tried to kind of write theories about how to do a game concept, I don't like any of them, to be honest. So I have my own process, I would say. And to make a long story short, I would say that first, I will begin by the intention. We should never forget that we game designers, we game developers, we are artists. So we have a vision. It's like people who write role-playing games, we know what we want our players to feel, enjoy, okay? We have a vision of what we want, okay? And that should create passion, okay? And we should always start from that. Now, once we have this vision, the next question is to ask, what is my core gameplay? Now, what is the core gameplay? The core gameplay is the action that you will be doing thousands of times in a game. So it's a very small action. For instance, in Super Mario, when you jump, that's a core gameplay. Super short, but if it's not fun, you can guess what will happen. People will get bored. So these single actions, and I'm not even talking of rewards. A core gameplay, just by doing it, must be fun without any reward, because this challenge, because the controls are easy, because the camera is good, because you've got juiciness, because you get feedback. So, you take this example of Super Mario. You walk with Mario, you press on the jump button because there's a gap. Look at the animation, look at the sound. It's enjoyable. Just that. There's little challenge, enough, and so on. That's a core gameplay. So this is the second thing to design. What the hell is my core gameplay? Is it fun or not? Eventually, you can have more than one core gameplay, okay? But at least one, okay? Then the third step is to define the game system. Now, the game system, it's basically all the features. It includes, the game modes, the game structure, the narrative, how you're going to build the difficulty, the renewal of the player's experience, okay, and so on. That's the game system, okay? Once you have the game system, okay, then you can start investigating, okay, do I need a narrative? Yes or no? What is it going to be the storytelling and so on? Then what about the art, the level design? So you see, you expand. But the first thing is really, your intention, the core gameplay, the game system. That's, to me, the right way to do it. And this is very practical because this is what I've been doing for 30 years. So no theory, it's basically when I was game designers. And I say that because very often for many clients, they ask me, do us a concept, do us a game. Okay. So obviously they would give me some constraints. So the game has to be, on this kind of machine, on this game genre, blah, blah, okay. But then I was in front of the white screen, white page. Where do I start from? And this is the method I've developed. Intention, core gameplay, game system, and then the rest flows.
Okay. So
very practical.
A lot of theory, but this is practical.
Yes,
actionable.
Yes.
So
game design is not necessarily very difficult. Sorry, game design is not necessarily very difficult once you know what step you need to take first and in which order you take them. You see, but it's not no rocket science,
So I have no more questions I've prepared, and I don't know if there are questions from the audience.
There is one. I see there is one.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can read it.
Yep.
Yeah. Is the concept of a flow state something you think about when working on a game?
No. Flow state is great to explain to non-gamers how a game works, okay? But we never use it. What we do, on the other hand, is that we try to balance the difficulty level. So, it's neither too hard nor too difficult. But that's it, We never use, the flow theory, in practice. I've never seen it, never.
Okay.
So it's a tool for teaching game design, game experience, yes.
So it's like for the audience, we're talking about a flow state that was like coined by Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist, researcher, and it's like a state of the mind when you are in a not too difficult and engaging activity. Yes. And there are a lot of studies about it and about what happens to your brain during it. For example, recent studies they advise not to be in flow state when you're doing work or when you're doing study because you lose touch with your making, and it's bad for job. I mean, you could be like working for 3 hours, but you're not really focused and sentient about that. It's like you lose track of time. Maybe it's good for gaming or maybe not, but it's certainly interesting to study. It's probably difficult to design around it.
It's impossible, Yeah. I mean, that's why I say it's more of a theoretical tool. It's interesting to know it, okay? But practically speaking, we never do that, We design for game experience that are going to last for 15, 20, 30, 100 hours, I mean. So yes. So we design, we use different tools, that we don't use that. Yes.
Yeah, and also I think that it's like an easy thing that you can think about. Okay, if there's that, the game is good. So it reassures you if you're a game designer that okay, that's what I have to aim to, but it's not written anywhere that you should make a 50 hours game in which the player is always in the flow state, because probably that's bad. Probably you want the player to oscillate and feel more alive.
It's just that it's impossible. We don't have full control over what the player does. By definition, a game is an interactive product. So to a large extent, the player, has his own way, his own will, so.
Yeah. And do you think that all the games that try to be completed, like forcibly completed by players, that trend, for example, that made God of War be like telling you solutions to puzzles like 5 seconds after you've encountered it, do you think it's due to flow? The game designer try to achieve flow forcibly?
No, I think it's because, they are targeting a casual audience. So people who don't play very much. No, to me, casual audience, it's people who play Candy Crush, those kind of games, or hidden object games. So for those audience, that don't play games very much, you don't want any frustration, because otherwise they just leave. We gamers and hardcore gamers, we like frustration, we like the challenge, we like to sweat and lose, we're a bit masochist. But the casual audience, no, they're not into that kind of experience.
So it should be like related to tied to a game settings. For example,
Yes.
The difficulty mode, casual, and then you have that. And also all the rubber banding, all the automatic difficulty, for example, enemies stopping an attack on you if you cannot handle it.
This is a little bit different. If it's subtle, that's absolutely valid. The difficulty is to tune it properly.
So I guess it's done with playtesting. So you have to just try and.
Okay, first yes, you use playtesting. And then to me, the best solution is just to have one, rubber banding, as you described, can have some unfortunate consequences, because you lose control about what's going to happen. Let me give you an example. You are in a combat, you lose once, twice, 3 times. Here the software saying, Pascal is not doing very good, so we're going to help him, all right? And suddenly, the opponents, they can't hit you, or they die too quickly, So the danger is that you're not going to say, I'm good. No, you say something's wrong in the game. You say, this is fishy, they are stealing my victory away. That could happen with rubber banding if it's not properly done. And it's very difficult to do. So my solution here is that not to touch anything, not rubber banding, but you offer to the player different level of difficulties. And when he has the game over, he has the choice. Okay, this level is too hard. Okay, so I'll go for the slightly easier. On the other hand, this one, it's a bit too easy. So I will go for the more difficult, knowing that I will get more reward. That's good, okay? But rubber banding, can be dangerous.
So being explicit, I've seen it in games. For example, when you start losing, it says, at every time you can change the difficulty. At every time you could change. So that's a lot better, right? So explicit.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, probably was like a trend in the past. Probably now it's stopped. That game designers were trying to make the game that auto adapts to everybody, and now they understood that no, it's just more easier to make more difficulty levels, and you can tweak them amidst game, and then you just roll with it. And related to this, Silksong came out recently, and there were a lot of YouTubers trying to cover it. And also Mark Brown made a video about difficult games about that. What are your thoughts about choosing to make a difficult game and also designing for a difficult game? For example, Silksong or Dark Souls.
There's an audience for that. Yeah, there's a market. Why not?
So you just don't feel like as a game designer, you have to be in the mind of the player and know that it's not like you're punishing them just for.
No, because you know your audience. You have an audience who likes that. People who play Elden Ring and and the Bloodborne and so on. That's what they like. So let's give it to them.
So yeah, you have to be in touch with your audience and
Of course, you
play
must
test the
know your
game.
audience. Yeah, you must have an idea of what your audience is and what he's looking for. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing special about that. Just an audience that wants that. Okay. So if we don't have any question, I will proceed to asking you about your courses. If you don't have anything you want to touch about before that.
Yes, I mean, I think I'm kind of happy you talked about kind of teaching game design, because yes, I kind of felt that, there was a missing stone, in teaching. So I published a few months ago an online video course to teach the fundamentals of game design. So it's really targeted at people who want to learn game design, and it's very practical. So little theory, but I give the fundamentals, to understand how to build a solid core gameplay. And also explain how to design a game system. I provide an example. So I try to be very practical. It's available on the Udemy learning platform. It's a 3 hours and a half. It's in English, but subtitled, in English and French. I haven't done Italian version yet. So yes, if you guys are interested in learning game design, the basics, you can check it out. I have a link, and this link gives access to a 25% discount because the course is sold for €20. It's impossible to go below. That's what the Udemy platform imposes. So yes, so I'm be happy to share with you this link. I don't know how I can do that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll put it on the description of the video on YouTube and on Spotify, I think, also. And
Okay.
how long is it, the course?
It's 3 hours and a half.
Okay.
So it's not one go. You've got 20 modules. It's each module is like 6 minutes only.
Okay. So it's practical, on point, actionable, and I hope you will do the courses we spoke about earlier about playtesting and game design documents, because I also think those will be needed.
Thank you. I mean, I can tell you that the one, the second one on the design documents and on the process of doing a game, I'm working on it now.
Okay.
Now, the thing is that it takes me a lot of time, to be honest. The first one, it took me 11 months to do it because I try to do things good, and simplifying things is not as easy as it sounds. So, voilà. So the next one is in the process, and I'll let you know when it's out. But yes, I'm on it. Yes.
Nice. I hope it will be of help to our community and to people watching this podcast. I hope we can reach even further than our little Italian community.
Yes.
Podcasts
I'll share the link, as soon as possible. And then also, otherwise, you go to the Udemy game platform to type my name, Pascal Luban, and there's only one class.
Okay.
But you won't have access to the 25% discount. So it's better to use the link I'm going to share with you now.
And you also have a website with a blog that maybe is of interest with people. And are you also available as a freelance? If people want to contact you?
Yes, depends on my workload. Yes, but yes.
Okay. So I've read on your website that, you can do like just consulting or the whole design of a game, be like lead game designer and
that's right.
Different.
Yes.
Okay.
Although I don't have the time now, so I'm only taking consulting missions.
Okay. Okay. So maybe if someone had a game implemented and designed, and they want to address a few problems, or maybe they want to set up playtest sessions, you can consult about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we don't have questions, I think we can say hi to each other. And it really was like 2 hours, but it felt like 5 minutes. It was very pleasing to speak to you. I hope
you
that
again.
the community will welcome that. And I think people will get your course, and I hope well for you about that. And maybe we can see each other another time.
I try to be very practical and really help people. I mean, I'm really trying to share my experience, so that's what I try to do with this course. So I got some good feedback from first users, so it makes me very, very happy, you know. So, but
Okay,
you guys
okay,
will tell me.
good to know. Good to know. So this has been the 54th. Angela, is that correct?
Seems like so.
You,
Yeah.
you got the number right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I think I
54th
got the-
podcast. And it was the first one of 2025. And see you on the next episode, I guess. So bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you again, Pascal. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.